right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Red Rain, episode 175. Let's welcome in our host, Walter Mitchell.
Thank you, Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter, sporting his Sack Kings hat. They are on a roll, winning 9 of the last 10 in grand fashion and lighting the beam all the way. So we're excited for him. We're excited to have special guest Marcos Labrada, our best friend, to join us again today. We're going to talk about the position rankings that Maserati Marv posted on Twitter or X, which I thought was great. I mean, great topic for conversation and debate. Before we start, I just want to announce that I was just given this Arizona Cardinals jersey for a Christmas present. I met on a belated Christmas gathering with my daughter, Allie, and her husband, my son-in-law, Eric, and my granddaughters, Lily and Maggie. And this is what they gave me. I thought it was so cool. They had no idea who Larry Fitzgerald was. And instead of picking my birthday, which is coming up in a week of 70, they picked 11. And the serendipity of that is so cool to me. Plus, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that?
Yep. Oh, they put the Mitchell on the back.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
That's great.
So
That's awesome.
I mean, I'm just so excited. The serendipity of them picking Fitz's number, and Eric said 11 is my favorite number, so I picked that. Man, you just don't know how great that is, how you picked that. Because one of my great idols, favorite Cardinals of all time. I mean, he's everyone's is Fitz, and so to be wearing Fitz in the brand new style feels awfully good. So we're going to be off and running. Kyle's going to show us each category first. We'll do them one at a time. I'll turn to Marcos and get whether he agrees with Marv's rankings there. We'll just get in a cool little discussion. We'll try to do this pretty quickly.
All right, let's go through it. So for those watching on YouTube or on Spotify, you can see the rankings here as well. But we'll start off with quarterbacks. So at the quarterback position, we have NFC West positional rankings. Number 1, Los Angeles Rams. Number 2, Arizona Cardinals. Number 3, Seattle Seahawks. And number 4, San Francisco 49ers.
Right. And notice how he said rankings for the 2024 season. So it's not like a projection to next year. It's what transpired in 2024. Marcos, agree, disagree? What's your thought?
Nah, I don't agree with that one. It's kind of crazy that he even put like most of the time when you're talking about somebody who's like a Cardinals fan, they'll put the Cardinals at number 1, and then everybody else like there. But he's trying to remain unbiased by just putting Matthew Stafford ahead because he made the playoffs and whatnot. But if you're talking about season, like actual season play and whatnot, there was a time where like at the beginning of the season, Brock Purdy was playing insanely good, with the exception of the fact that like his team around him was just like getting injured and whatnot. So it was just him dragging his team. And then the offense took a step back with Kyle Shanahan not adapting to what scheme he had going the year before, and they just weren't adapting or any when it comes to that. So when it comes to like this actual list right here, I would have to put Geno Smith at the very back end. Um, I'm not sure if I'd have to put Matthew Stafford ahead of Kyler Murray because yeah, like he said, he did make the playoffs and whatnot, but it's a toss up between him and Brock Purdy, and I know people will like talk down about Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy has achieved quite a bit. But then again, it is the 2024 season, so I guess maybe I'd be inclined to just say That's it's a toss up between between Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy. And I'm talking about full season before people start saying, what about the last two games? Yeah, the last two games. We're talking about the entire 2024 season as a whole and
Right.
whatnot. Uh, I guess for just the sake of just giving him the benefit of the doubt after I just like took it away, I'll agree with him on this one just for now. Well, actually, no, because Gino's last on that list. So, yeah. So
Yeah,
I don't
my
agree.
thing is that Gino swept the Cardinals. Kyler is 0-4 against Gino. Some people argue wins aren't a quarterback stat, but if you look at the body of work in those 4 games, it's clear to me anyway, and I'm biased because I'd want my guy, that Geno Smith outperformed Kyler Murray on pretty much all 4 occasions, the closest coming at the end of last year with the 2 missed field goals and all that. So I can't justify putting Kyler ahead of Geno. Plus, Geno led the division in yards and passing, and so now Kyler's a better runner, although Geno's sneaky. He's pretty good. So, but I can't justify putting Kyler ahead. I can somewhat this year justify him being ahead of Purdy because the Cardinals swept the Niners and they beat the Niners in Santa Clara when Purdy was starting. We beat Dobbs at the end. So, given the 2024 season, the way I would rank them is Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals, 49ers. Let's go to the running backs. Kyle?
Let's do it. Number 1, San Francisco 49ers. Number 2, number 2, Arizona Cardinals. Number 3, Seattle Seahawks. Number 4, Los Angeles Rams.
All right, we're going to alternate. I'll go first, and then I'll turn over to Marcos. I got Cardinals first. McCaffrey was hurt. Morgan started off on fire, but the Cardinals' running game was number 1 in all major categories in the running game for the season, and Connor was the bell cow. And I think, in my opinion, the best running back in 2024 in the division. So I would rank them Cardinals first. Then it's really a toss-up for me. Yeah, I kind of would go with, I think, Kenneth Walker, who was off and on hurt, had a better season than the Niners guys. So, and then I don't know how to rank the other ones, but I just know the Cardinals in my mind without a doubt. And plus, they were 4th best in the NFL in pass blocking, according to PFF, which again was number 1 in the division. So, offensive line, with running back, I'm going with James Conner, Cardinals number 1. What do you got?
Yeah, same here. I'm going number 1 Cardinals. I'm going number 2. Uh, so number 1 is Cardinals. Number 2 is Seattle. Number 3 San Fran, and number 4 is Los Angeles. Seattle, while they had that scheme in place and they did have like good play by Morgan behind Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey was banged up, so I can't justify putting him like, hey, like this running back room by this San Francisco 49ers is the best when the Cardinals outperformed. Not only did they have one of the top rushing attacks in the league, all their running backs were averaging above like 4 yards a carry, and like the
5,
the running back, no 5, yeah, and
5.3.
they're yep. And on top of which, they're very very deep at this position, and we even saw like that last game against the 49ers where we had Jones rip off like what 37-yard touchdown at the very end because of the fact that their scheme with Drew Petzing was so elite and the running backs were able to like execute like all the reads that they needed to do to be able to make sure they hit the right gap with the
Right.
exception of Trey Benson kind of coming on slowly, he's gonna pick up. And I mean, going forth, I'm excited about the running back room and the scheme that we have going forth for the Cardinals. So I disagree with the running back.
Okay. So I think Marcos and I are in agreement that Cardinals on both counts probably shouldn't be second in quarterback and shouldn't be second in running back. And probably third in quarterback or maybe even fourth, but first in running back. Offensive line, Kyle.
Offensive line numbers. We've got the Rams at number 1, the Cardinals at number 2, San Francisco at number 3, and the Seattle Seahawks coming in a distant 4th.
Marcos?
I disagree with this list again. I think the Cardinals, if their offensive line wasn't consistently getting hurt, even if they were shuffling the deck a couple of times, they overachieved what they were set out to do this year or what they were ranked as because of the fact that they had players that were like stalwarts at their position and then they got injured. And then when you had somebody coming in to replace, it's not like it looked like a detrimental loss with the exception of maybe the the game against the Los Angeles Rams and somewhat the game against the San Francisco 49ers, but like you're getting too deep at that position. You didn't even have Paris Johnson out there in the last game of the season. And Will Hernandez was a huge loss. But I don't think whatever they put the ranking as, I don't think I think we have the best line out there, and I'm not sure why Los Angeles has a better line than the Cardinals do in this ranking.
Right. Same. I mean, when the Cardinals are number one in rushing um, in the division in every major category, and then are the best pass blocking unit per PFF in the division. I mean, the evidence there is overwhelmingly suggests. The thing about the Rams is their pass blocking hasn't been all that good, to tell you the truth. And their running game wasn't as on track as it normally is. So if it was a normal Rams year, I might be inclined to say yes, but the Cardinals whooped butt up front this year, and they deserve their number one ranking. Let's go to the next.
All right, we got wide receivers here. The Los Angeles Rams come in number 1, the Seattle Seahawks at number 2, Arizona Cardinals number 3, San Francisco 49ers dead last at number 4.
Agreed, all the way across the board. Great job by Marv. On a more healthier year for the 49ers, that probably doesn't happen, but because they lost Ayuk and they had their issues there at wide receiver this year. It was a down year for them. So, yeah, I'm good with that. Marcos?
No, at first when I first read it, I disagreed with it, but now that I looked at the list again, yeah, that's actually one of the more accurate ones, mostly because you have Puka Nacua. He's a he's a beast at his position and whatnot. He's like it's so crazy how he transcended like last year's rookie class being like a fifth round pick, and then
Right.
this year he picks up where he left off. And Cooper Cup is having himself a down year and whatnot, but he's still like Cooper Cup. You have the Seattle Seahawks who have probably like the three-headed monster when it comes to like they might lose one of their members, but they're still elite at those positions and whatnot. So yeah, I agree with this one.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me, too, is that I think hands down the best wide receiver in this year's draft was McConkey. And he was a second rounder. I mean, like in today, and I've been arguing this, and Kyle knows this because we've been talking about this a lot. Today, slot receivers, rack guys who can catch, turn, and run with the football are in vogue, and all the guys that make All Pro these days are guys who play in the slot or outside. All of them, Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Amon St. Brown is a classic example. And now Nakua. I mean, winning out of the slot and getting huge numbers out of the slot is today's game. That's one of the reasons why I was arguing that taking Marvin at 4 might have been a little high, given that dynamic in the NFL going right now. And Marvin's game will evolve, so we got to be excited about that. But just the same, the production out of the slot is so huge, and that it's reflected here. I mean, you got Nakua and Coop, and Cup, and then you got Jackson and Smith and Jigba, who played really well this year. I thought he really had a great second season for them. And with the Cardinals, we don't really feed the slot. Fed the torch at the end of the year, but we don't feed the slot, but in favor of feeding the tight end. So let's go to the tight end. I know Marcos has something to say about this.
Well, we've got number 1, Trey McBride and the Arizona Cardinals. Number 2, George Kittle and the San Francisco 49ers. Number 3, the Los Angeles Rams. And number 4, the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah. Well, let me, it's because the list looks like a very tiny to me, so I've been trying to mess around with it. There we go. I believe I can see closer. You're gonna have to read that off again to me because I was trying to look at the list.
Yeah, no worries. We got Cardinals number 1, 49ers number 2, Rams number 3, Seahawks number 4.
Well, I don't disagree with the fact that the Cardinals are number one on that or number one on that list. George Kittle apparently got the honors when it comes to like being an All-Pro, which is ridiculous to me that he got that over Trey McBride. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's more of a name sake type of like who's still a good player out there. The 49ers have like, big market team when it comes to getting more fans and having more like views towards them. Even if they have a losing season, they get talked about more than the Cardinals can or should be. And when it comes to like being in the division, the Cardinals get the less eyeballs thrown at them and less talked about. The national media doesn't talk about the Cardinals as much, and when they do, they pick up on just the usual like what are the narratives out there? What can we pick up on? Oh, okay, like this is what's going on. It's part of what led Cliff Kingsbury to be fired to begin with was because the notion here in the community was that Cliff Kingsbury was a bad head coach and he was dragging down this offense and this team all overall. So the national media is just going to talk about it as in like, oh, what's going on out there? Okay, we listen to this. So the same thing goes for Trey McBride. Trey McBride should have been an All-Pro this year. There's no question about it. He is a good blocking tight end. That was the thing about Trey McBride coming out of the combine was that he was a good pass catcher and a good blocking tight end. So he had the combination of both, which is why he was the best tight end out of that class. And as you can see, he's already flourished in year 3, even though like he had a great season last year. He exceeded all that, and to not be named as an All-Pro is just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, that one bothered me a little bit because I think it was so close between more so between McBride and Bowers. But with Kittle, here's the numbers kind of, I mean, he's been the gold standard with Travis Kelce for, 5-6 years now. You have to consider blocking too. And this is an area where I think that Trey McBride is making strides, but his 6 holding penalties over the course of the year didn't help. And he's still refining his blocking skills to be able to block without holding. But most of the time he's done pretty well. He finished with a 63.4 blocking grade. Kittle's was 70.8. Kittle is like the marquee blocking all-purpose tight end in the NFL. And if you look at their numbers, PFF grades, Kittle was 92.1. Overall, McBride's 86.8. And part of the reason is that they were pretty close in yards. Kittle had 1,106, and Trey had 1,146, so 40 yards off. But Kittle had 8 TDs, had a higher average per catch. And unfortunately, as bizarre as this was, McBride only had 2 TDs over the course of the season, although he had a rushing TD on the tight end jet sweep. So it's tricky. I mean, I'm so delighted that McBride is making these incredible, improvements, and he deserves. I agree with Marcos. He deserves um, strong consideration for All Pro. I would have taken him over because I think he does some things that Brock Bowers doesn't quite do yet. But Bowers was just so dang productive. It was amazing. Of course, would have helped too that Trey missed one game, so he could have added another game to that production and maybe scored a couple touchdowns to narrow some of the gaps. But boy, oh boy, that's a tough decision. So, in good conscience, if we can go back to the list, I have to say, put Kittle, the 49ers first, without question, the Cardinals second. I mean, and then it's a toss up between if you like Higbee or Noah Fant. I thought Fant had a better season, so I would have gone Seahawks, Rams. But yeah, that would be it for me. Let's go on to cornerback.
All right. So moving over to corners. Number 1, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Number 2, the San Francisco 49ers. Number 3, the Arizona Cardinals, finally out of the basement. And number 4, the Los Angeles Rams.
I got all those, although I would put SF first at corner. And I'm going to say a little something about Seattle in the safety room. But I think the Niners corners are just a tad better, certainly in coverage. So I would go SF, Seattle, and I'm proud of our Cardinals for gaining in these, in the rankings. We're going to show the team stats in a minute, but I think they got all the way up to 16th in coverage this year, which was a mixed bag because in zones they really struggled, but in man they really locked down at times and played great with our young free players, Max Melton, Garrett Williams, and Starling, Star the fifth. Marcos, how do you see this?
It's hard for me to like disagree with this because of the fact that like you have cornerback, you had Witherspoon with the Seattle Seahawks, and Spoon is just like he's a revelation to that. San Francisco, uh, I guess I'd have to put him at number 2. Um, yeah, I guess I'd have to keep him at number 2. And Los Angeles, I cannot disagree with the fact that they had the worst cornerback room in this position because of the fact that
Right.
like people have mentioned that like Kyler Murray had some really good performances against them, but they really had a weak cornerback room, and they were by PFF they were like coming off of 2023. They were the worst when it came to going into 2024, and we faced them in the second game of the season, so nothing had changed when it came to that. So yeah, I think I'd have to agree with this list. Just because I think Witherspoon is just such a stud that he lifts that group just kind of like the same way as Garrett Williams lifts our group of
Yeah.
cornerbacks in this and he's a really good zone cornerback, and I don't know if that's the main reason why they call it so much for the Cardinals, but
Right.
he's so great at zone. But I will give a warning, he gets exposed in man coverage, unfortunately,
Yeah.
which I'm not sure why they don't just shift him to the outside already, have him play more to the line of scrimmage, because playing man
Right.
coverage from the slot is difficult.
It sure is, and boy, it's so important in today's NFL. And that's why every draft I look for the guy who's got the feet, the quickness, the leverage to play it. And I think the last few years, I kind of identified a few that I really liked. I wanted McDuffie for us a few years ago. He's legit. I mean, he's an All Pro now. I wanted Brian Branch, and then this last year I wanted Mikey Sanders still. I want him with the second pick in the first round. And boy, is he balling right now. So,
well, I was going to say to your
yeah,
point, Walter, look at the 4 teams that are left in the playoffs right now. You've got Washington with Sammerstill and what he's done. You've got
yeah,
the Eagles with Gardner Johnson and everything he does in the secondary. You've got Teron Johnson in Buffalo. He's an elite slot corner. And then you've got
yes,
McDuffie in Kansas City, who might be the best at it in the league. So all 4 teams left standing have that guy who can cover in the slot.
right. I just did a quick note, and I have, upon further review, I agree with Marcos and with Marvelous Marv. They're absolutely right. It is Seahawks first. Because what I forgot is Charvarius Ward had such a rough year. I mean, I'm thinking Ward and Lenore, who's been playing amazing. Except that now I realize, yeah, Ward had kind of a down year, and he's had the off-season stuff, off-field tragedy. I really feel for the guy. So, and then in retrospect, Witherspoon had the highest corner grade in both teams at 76.1, and Wooten had a bounce back year. He played well, 67.9. Lenore was 67.3, and Ward was 56.2. So absolutely, hats off to Marvin and to Marcos for getting that straight. All right, let's go to the safeties.
Let's go to the safeties. Here we have the Arizona Cardinals, number 1, Seattle Seahawks at number 2, San Francisco 49ers at number 3, and the Los Angeles Rams coming in at number 4.
Yeah, this one, in all fairness, I think the Seahawks deserve. Their tandem this year is outstanding between Julian Love, 81.2, Kobe Bryant, 72.8. Buddha had a great year and was all-pro, but we struggled at the other. I mean, JT was average, but the Seahawks tandem was stronger. So I'm gonna have to go Seahawks there. I think that the Cardinals are certainly second. I think the rest of the rankings are right. What do you think, Marcos?
Well, I would have I would have put the Cardinals at number 1 just because the great play by Buda Baker. Yeah, Jalen Thompson was average at best, and there's some argument that maybe they're thinking about moving off from him this offseason to try to
Right.
clear some space and let DTD take over. And I'm a big fan of Dadrion Taylor Demiston. So, but I think as far as like tandem wise is going, I would put the Cardinals above the Seahawks. I'm not saying that the Seahawks don't have a good safety room, but when it comes to like elevate, like who really has the All Pro out of both of them, by far we have the All Pro over whatever the Seahawks have in their safety room. San Francisco 49ers, it's more of an injury type of thing. I would
Right.
say that if they were probably healthy, they would be second to the Cardinals here. And Los Angeles, of course, being that at the very end. I mean, that's not shocking at all. Like we can't even follow or name whoever's in their safety room because they're just terrible at it.
I
Yeah.
think Cameron Curl might be there. That's the only name I can think of. I think maybe Cameron Curl is there.
That's good. Yeah. The problem I have is that, in coverage, our safeties were bad. Sorry. And the Seahawks safeties were kicking our butt. I mean, and I watched them in other games. I thought they were fantastic in coverage. Let me just take a look. Julian Love, 76.1 coverage grade. Kobe Bryant, 68.0. Yeah. I mean, in ours, if we look, I mean, Buddha did not have a great year in coverage, but he was so focused on other. I mean, Buddha was like the savior, so we can't.
He was being asked to do linebacker stuff.
He had a 74.7 coverage grade. Let's see Thompson's.
I
mean,
think that's
Buddha was
more
great.
because of the zone.
Buddha was, yeah. he's good in zone. He's lost a step in man, unfortunately, but there are ways to avoid having that be a liability, and I think they do it pretty well. But yeah, Thompson 64.2, which is average. So,
Yeah.
and then Dadrian Taylor Demerson, wished he had played more, 70.0. So I agree with Marcos. If we had had the tandem, and this is what I said in my article too, if we had had the tandem, more of Rabbit with Buddha, then I can make the argument and feel confident about it. All right, D line. Marcos will be up first. Go ahead, Kyle.
All right, in our defensive line rankings, we have the Los Angeles Rams, the Aaron Donald-less Los Angeles Rams coming in at number 1, the San Francisco 49ers at 2, Seattle Seahawks at 3, Arizona Cardinals last place at number 4.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with the list on Los Angeles being number 1. I mean, I can't deny the type of work that they did to be able to replenish that line after losing Aaron Donald, and then pretty much just stacking it with people that can replenish his production with the rookie and their sophomore class. It's just unbelievable, and I wish we could take a note out of that to be able to like build our lines, because who's in the playoffs right now as we speak? The Los Angeles, or were in the playoffs actually. The Los Angeles Rams made it to the playoffs, won a game against a team they weren't supposed to beat, and they beat them because they had so much pressure that their defensive line pretty much carried them into
Right.
beating a team they had no business beating. They just didn't. Minnesota was favored, and they just put a trouncing in our own building. So it's an embarrassment that somebody else comes in into our own division and shows us how to do a rebuild, where the Cardinals unfortunately have to be last place, not because of effort. And I mentioned this. Effort isn't the reason why they get last place in this division. It's just the talent, the reason why they get last place. It's just the production. But with effort, these guys, like, I wish I could rank him number 1 when it comes to that. San Fran over the Seattle Seahawks is hard because of Leonard Williams
Yes.
and Boy
Yes.
Mafe having himself
Yep.
a better year and whatnot. So I think I'd have to flip those, because I know that Nick Bosa is still Nick Bosa, but that line
Right.
didn't seem as dominant as it did before.
Right.
So I would have to put the Seahawks ahead of San Francisco, and of course, unfortunately, put my Cardinals at the very end.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. I would flip I put the Seahawks second. I mean, Leonard Williams had an 87.1 grade. Um, your boy Mafe, I think, good shout out to him, with 75.2. And Jaron Reed had a really nice season, 70.6. I mean, they really came on. They struggled there last year, and I think Mike McDonald did a really good job of firing those guys up. I mean, Leonard Williams wrecked us in 2 games, and he was on, not just against us down the stretch there. He was on a roll. So yeah, I would flip those 2, and unfortunately, the Cardinals still are last, and I still see people mocking offensive players 1 and 2 in this year's draft. It's driving me out of my freaking mind. Is it just like, let's just do more and more on offense and ignore the fact that we haven't drafted a beefy nose tackle, inside space eater who can get after it yet in 2 years. And who we you know we signed 2 guys who got hurt right away, and neither one of those is the kind of nose tackle you really want anyway. So I'm hoping for Kenneth Grant at 16. I would rush him to the podium if he's there right now. And there's another couple other really good prospects inside, depending on if one of the edge guys slides to us, then you can go ahead, grab the edge guy and go defensive tackle in round 2. So the kid Lott from Tennessee might be around then, and there's just some other good ones. All right, so
Wasn't Monty's thing supposed to be that he was supposed to build the trenches? And so when we
Yeah,
first got him over, especially him and Dave Sears, that their responsibility was that they were gonna rebuild like the trenches, not just the offensive side, but the defensive side.
right,
And they just kind of went with the, we'll just sign two above average like run stoppers as our, defensive tackles, and that'll patch that up and just completely ignore the edge and just try to see
right,
if we can shift somebody that's an inside linebacker over to
right,
outside, and then he should be the next coming of like Will Anderson.
right. Great point. And I it's it's such an important offseason for the Cardinals D line wise. I mean, when you look at the Rams now, don't you just drool? I mean, look at the Rams. They knew Aaron Donald was going to retire soon, and they got ahead of addressing it before. And look at the way the Rams guys are playing up front with Young, with Kobe, Turner. Love that kid. I mean, in the way they got the production they got from Verse and Fisk, awesome. I mean,
I
I
couldn't
mean,
believe that broadcast stat that they had the third most sacks in of any playoff run in NFL history, and they only played 2 games, and they ended up
right,
with the third most sacks of
right,
any team in any playoff run at 16.
right. So we're way behind, on the D line. We really hope that with the cap space we have and with the draft capital we have, that will be addressed full fledged with the edge. So let's go to the linebackers, Kyle. What do you got?
All right. So at linebackers, number one, the 49ers, carried by future first ballot Hall of Famer Fred Warner. Second, the Seattle Seahawks. Third, the Los Angeles Rams. And fourth, the Arizona Cardinals.
I'm good with that. I don't see any reason to, especially once the Seahawks got Ernest Jones, who, by the way, is a free agent, and he's on my list as one of the priority signings. I would love to get him in here. I still can't imagine why. Oh, and by the way, if you were watching the Rams struggle with Saquon Barkley, I think Ernest Jones would have made a difference in that game. Just an FYI. I mean, the inside linebackers for the Rams were just awful yesterday, and you gave up on Ernest Jones. I don't get it. He was balling for you guys. He was our nemesis. And then he gets on the Seahawks and tricks Kyler Murray into an interception. That's one of the interceptions I don't blame Kyler on at all. I mean, he got baited and really cleverly by a veteran guy who's only in his fourth year, who's performed at a high level. So yeah, once they got Ernest Jones, see that was a trading deadline deal that made a huge difference. Huge. I mean, we got Baron Browning, which was great, and he made an impact, but not the kind of impact that Ernest Jones made. And they may have moved on from two guys they signed who they thought were going to be great. But in midstream, they're not doing what we want them to do. So they moved on quickly, and they got someone in the place who was a leader for them down the stretch. And in those two Cardinal games, Ernest Jones was a huge factor. And unfortunately, I was wanting the Cardinals to get an inside linebacker the kid I wanted was Spillane from Vegas, because I really like him. But in retrospect, I didn't know we could get Ernest Jones again via trade because he'd just been traded. So amazing that the Seahawks were able to get him. But I have no problem with that list. How about you, Marcos?
Well, Ernest Jones is a Brett Coleman favorite. He had mentioned like if you like to blitz your linebackers, that's somebody you definitely want to get on your on team and whatnot. So we went to the Titans, and then he got traded for. Ernest Jones had the same similar type of interception that he had on Kyler Murray, back in 2021 when they faced off
Right.
against the Rams in the end zone. Kyler was trying to target uh, Zach Ertz on a seam route, and Ernest Jones hook drops and baits him. He did the same similar thing
Oh
when he
yeah.
tried to target Marv. Was Ernest Jones had his back turned to the boundary, and then he hook drops. Kyler Murray sees that his back is turned towards that direction. He tries to uh, fit it behind him, and Ernest just turns around, pops up, and gets that interception. And I was like, that's some classy that's some master class, like hook dropping and baiting from a linebacker. So yeah, I would love to have him on the team. I will appreciate that, like, Maserati Marv did like show unbiased on this one, because I don't agree with the placing of the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals have better linebacking core than the Rams do, so I would have put him third. But at the very least, he's not drinking the Kool-Aid like a bunch of other Cardinals fans that will say like this is a stout linebacker room, when you do have one that's known as a playmaker but not really the run stopper you're supposed to be, and the other one
Right.
is just a liability in coverage. So much
Right.
so that, like, I believe that they are thinking about like moving off of him because they need to get upgraded at that. There, I can pop off any type of film during the entire season, defensive wise, and we'll find a miscue in coverage with Kaiser White, like, either covering the same defender as somebody already that's already somebody else's assignment. So you have two guys on one person, leaving a big zone open, or a situation where like he's just not in the right position, or he's not there. That George Kittle, that okay. So one of the main things that they bring up about Kaiser White, and this drives me nuts about the community that doesn't watch the All 22, is they say, well, look at the interception. He had that interception against San Francisco.
Right.
That interception was made because Jalen Thompson got through the line of scrimmage
Right.
and was sent on a blitz, and and he altered Brock Purdy's arm, throwing
Right.
it up in the air where Kaiser White was the closest defender there.
Right.
He was supposed to be defending George Kittle on that blitz call, and George Kittle had like 5 to 10 yards of separation
He did.
between him and Kaiser White. If Brock Purdy doesn't get hit on that, he has George Kittle for an easy 15-20 yard completion, because he can just
Yeah.
turn and like Kaiser White's like assignment is just so far away that he would get in that 15-yard completion. Do you think the 49ers lose that game at that point if they lost by a field goal? Um, they could have just
Right.
driven down, and that would have happened. So good on Kaiser for being the right person at the right time, but that's not credited to him. He was just there making the play. Good for him, but don't give him the flowers because it's like, oh, he got the interception. It's not like he baited him. So
Yeah.
like I said, I'd put the Cardinals at number three, Los Angeles Rams at the very end, and I mean, I guess I'd have to agree with the San Francisco and Seattle placings, mostly because of Fred Warner.
Yeah. I can accept all that. Very well argued. Let's go to special teams.
All right, wrapping it up. Seahawks number one. Their punter is so good. Seahawks number one. Cardinals number two. The 49ers are number three, and the Los Angeles Rams come in at number four.
I'm glad that Marv picked us ahead of the 49ers. 49ers had a good year of special teams, but the difference for me was Chad Ryland over Jake Moody. Moody had his struggles after he got hurt. Ryland was a special find for the Cardinals, kicked 3 game winners, was smooth, great legs, got a future for us. So I think based on that, the others were close enough that I would pick the Cardinals second, the Niners third, and the Rams were last. I mean, Seahawks did have the best all around special teams in the division. I think kudos to Marv for listing it the way he did. Marcos?
Yeah, I agree. Same thing. And I would be inclined to put like the Cardinals ahead of the Seahawks, because our special teams coach, he's such a genius. He's made it through what, 3 regimes already. They just don't want to
Right,
get rid of him. And he
right.
pulls off some of the most like creative like fourth down, like fake punts
doesn't he?
and whatnot.
Right.
And I love those. Like
Yeah.
you don't pull the same play twice because you don't want to put it on film and whatnot. So
Yeah.
he just like changes it how he does that creativity. Like I believe there was one of them was a I'm not sure if it was a lateral, but you never know when it's gonna come, and when it comes, you're just like, yeah, that's exactly the shenanigans they would try to pull to try to get that fourth down call. So, I
Right.
I think I would just put the Cardinals at number one just for that alone, and plus Chad Ryland.
Yeah. So Kyle, will you pop up the list of the please of the rankings PFF wise per team? All right. So offense, amazingly, San Francisco was very productive. They didn't win a lot of games. Their defense really struggled, but they graded really well. Cardinals finished second, which with the Rams in the division and the Seahawks with the highest yards passing is a credit to the Cardinals game. And at ranked six in the NFL, people crying to fire Drew Petzing is just bizarre and really kind of insane at this point. I mean, because so much is going well. The offense isn't just about two guys; it's about everybody. And receiving, we all can recognize that our receivers we saw on that list. Pass game, Cardinals, believe it or not, were ranked ninth in the league by the PFF guys because of Trey McBride. But if you go to see the receiving grade up here, it's last. So obviously McBride's influence on the passing game was huge. And then the run game, that's wrong. I don't know how they ranked it that way, but the Cardinals deserve to be one. I mean, first of all, the irony of that is Seattle fired Ryan Grubb because they didn't like the running game. Now, I mean, when they did it, they were, Kenneth Walker was always really good. So they had some good averages, but it didn't match the Cardinals at all. So I disagree with that.
Well,
Run
and
blocking.
also I would add the run game is also a byproduct of your run blocking, and you
Yes,
can see the Seahawks are down here at 24,
right.
but
That's
they're
another.
seventh in running.
I mean, WTF? Seriously, I don't know. I
Which
don't get.
I would guess the argument they're making here is the Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet combination when they were playing together
Yeah,
would have ranked in the top, 25% in the league, but they struggled in the run blocking, so you didn't see run production as much, which is, as you mentioned, why Ryan Grubb got fired.
right. Yeah, that's a great point because this could be on team PFF grades of the players and not just, that's probably what happened. Pass blocking Cardinals number one, love that. Run blocking Cardinals three. That's a sticky one for me because I think it's so hard to grade zone blocking assignments because they are subject to change within a nanosecond. Depending if you're on the move, the rule of thumb is, remember this, Marcos, first flash of color. Whoever, if someone, you have to abandon whatever your first primary target was to block if someone else is busting up the play. So immediately you have to, on the fly, switch and cover. So they don't play, bust up the play. The Cardinals have gotten really good at that. So I think that's a misleading grade. And then, what do you think about that, Marcos?
You're talking about like
I
being
mean, I,
second.
yeah, look at go and watch the Brian Baldinger films of the Cardinals whooping ass up front. I mean, the Cardinals' run blocking was just so aggressive, more so than I've ever seen since the 1970s when we had Conrad Dobler, Tom Banks, Dan Dierdorf, Brian Finney, Bob Young. Those guys got off the ball. These guys get off the ball like I've never. Yeah, they are, and all of them do. All of them are trained to do it, and that's what one of the reasons why when we do have mass substitutions, we really don't, miss a tick. In fact, Marcos, I'll go back to that Rams game, which before you were saying like the. I don't know if you remember this, but the Cardinals outgained the Rams, who end up going to the playoffs and winning 10 games late in the season in that second to last game by 2-1. They had 396 yards with that makeshift line, and the Rams had like 230 something, maybe. I mean, it was a gross disparity. And kudos to the. I had a little bit of a back and forth message wise with Howard Balzer about that, who was kind of made a tweet like that I thought kind of ranked on the Cardinals lineup, offensive lineup. He said something like, you know, um, if anyone thinks the line of Kelvin Beachum at left tackle, Evan Brown at left guard, Schulte Froholt at center, Isaiah Adams at right guard, and Jackson Barton at right tackle is sustainable, he said, then they're delusional. And that was before the game. And then that line put up 400 points. 400 yards of offense. I thought they were great. I mean, that Rams defense has a pass rush. And they did get through at times, but I thought the Cardinals moved the ball well. We just didn't score. It was bizarre. The boink at the end of the game. But Marcos studies tape. He studied the Cardinals run blocking. What do you make of that, Marcos?
This over here reeks of just like namesake. San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan, Los Angeles, uh, Sean
Yeah,
McVay,
right,
Arizona Cardinals, Drew
right,
Petzing, who,
right,
Seattle Seahawks fired their guy. So they're just like thinking
right,
of themselves, who in the NFC West would these people rank against? And, oh well, Kyle Shanahan's a good he's good when it comes to like run game design. So let's put him first. Sean McVay has to be a little bit behind second. So when we grade their philosophies and their schemes, we'll put them accordingly, like where we think they rank in the NFL. And we don't know who Drew Petzing is, so we studied his wide zone scheme and whatnot. So
yeah,
we can't be too far down on them. So we'll put him at number 14, not even, but a little bit further than even though we have the Cardinals ranked ninth overall in the NFL in the run.
right,
And you cannot argue with the numbers that we put up when it comes to our running backs, when it comes to our and plus, like, to them, they probably think to themselves, maybe this upcoming year, Drew Petzing's probably going to be gone. So the Cardinals are not going to be up there when it comes to like when it comes to like run production and whatnot. But that's what that reeks of. I think that just reeks of lazy. Like, hey, San Francisco has Kyle Shanahan. We can't put him low,
right,
even if they produce at a low rate. Same thing goes for Sean McVay. Those guys are known for making the run creative and making us like the great scheme out of that, and but in the film it just doesn't agree with them because of the fact that they created a not only did they create such a good scheme that like even replacements can come in and pick it up, and they practice it so well so that when once somebody goes down in that line, they could still produce with the person coming behind them. So the
right,
scheme is 100% like undeniably better this year than what San Francisco and Los Angeles had to put out there because of the fact that if they want to say, oh well, the Cardinals have no names at the running back position except for James Conner, and James Conner isn't better than so and so in San Francisco or even whatever they did in Los Angeles. It's like he produced better than they did for a reason. It's because we had a good run blocking scheme. So I don't agree
right,
with that.
yeah. Um, And now I'm realizing too more about the pass grade. That includes our pass blocking. That is why, in the pass blocking, we were number one. So now I see why that bumped us up there. Because, let's face it, when the Rams are clicking in the passing game, we're not quite there yet. But they weren't clicking in a lot of games, which was weird. And particularly when Puka was hurt, they were having trouble winning games. So, and Cooper Kupp was just trying to gut it through. It's obvious he was ailing all season long. So, coming off last year's injury too. On the defensive side, I'm just going to sum it up by saying we got 3 last place 4s and 3 3s. So in no category, well, actually, it's 5 categories. So we have 3 worst: defense, overall, pass rush, and tackling, which is really disappointing to me. Take Buddha out of there, and we'd be, rock bottom. Well, not rock bottom. We had other pretty decent tacklers, but not consistent tacklers. But then you got 3 fourth places and 2 third places. This has got to be just a mega year of doing something with this defense. And the thing that I would encourage, they have to have a Washington Commanders type of offseason for the defense. Look at what the Commanders did in their signings, and then in the trade they made for Marshawn Lattimore, which was a huge, that's the kind of deal you want to make at the trading deadline. And I'm just worried, Kyle. Do you think the Cardinals have gained enough gravitas in the free agent market and particularly in light of the now popular defensive head coaches in the league, from D'Amico Ryans? People are going to want to go play for him if they come calling. Dan Quinn, Mike McDonald. There are others. So do you think this offseason the Cardinals will break through and sign some stars, free agents?
I think it depends on the player, because the answer always is money talks, right? If you throw the most money at someone, that talks. But we've talked about the Hassan Reddick thing now for 12 months, and it's like he has the connection to Arizona. He has the connection to Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis from their time together in Philadelphia. Do they want to make that reunion? Do they not? That's the player that I look at and say, if you're looking for star power, that's the one that makes the most sense. But other than that, I don't think it's anything other than paying the most money that could get you in the conversation with a lot of the Ernest Joneses and whoever else. But I don't know how many people are going into free agency saying, I want to go play for the Cardinals because of X, Y, and Z. I think, again, Reddick makes the most sense because of that personal connection. But other than that, maybe the other one is maybe Josh Sweat too. I don't know how Josh Sweat feels about Gannon or Rallis from their time together in Philadelphia, but that connection is there.
Josh Sweat is a system fit either.
No, maybe he's not.
We don't play a 4-man line. We're in a 34. Does he play inside at 34 D end? I guess he's listed as an outside linebacker, but that'd be like Chandler Jones again, right? You don't drop. I just don't see him as a prototypical 34 outside linebacker.
That's true, but I guess.
Yeah, I just wish the Cardinals would get out of that 34. They've never run it well. They don't draft well for it. I think they'd have a much better chance of switching to a 43 and really, really buttoning that thing down and getting it right for the prototypes, because we keep.
Yeah, to your point, I was going to say it's not really a system fit, but who else kind of isn't? Zaven Collins and BJ Ojolari also don't make sense with the system.
Well, yes. Actually, Collins, from defending the run and playing in coverage, dropping off in coverage is fine. Problem is, he's not, a great pass rusher. Ojolari's a better pass rusher, but he's not as good setting the edge. I mean, you give up something to get something, but
to your point, I don't think there's a definitive player who I'm like, yes, that person would change the tide of the defense and wants to join the Cardinals in free agency.
Right. I'm leery of Hassan Reddick after what transpired last year. I looked at him. I didn't think he was playing well for the Jets. And that's at his age and now coming into a big contract year. That concerns me. So, yeah. I mean, the guy I'd love to take a flyer on who I saw coming on, and I've always liked, is K'Lavon Chaisson of the Raiders and LSU. I've always believed once he gets his feet set in the NFL, he could have, like a Von Miller, like, maybe not Von, but he is so quick off that edge. And he would be a guy I'd love to see them at. And I don't think he's going to break anyone's bank at this point. I think he had 6 sacks last year, but he had a ton of pressures. And he's coming on, and I think he fits the weak outside role really well. So that would be a guy I'd really like. And of course, the guys in the draft. I mean, Donovan Izaraku from Boston College is an absolute stud. He's a Reddick clone who plays the run tougher than Reddick and is just as fast and quick getting to the quarterback. So, I mean, I think he'd be an ideal system fit.
And I know this is a name that you've been talking about in a trade for a year or so, and he didn't have a great year, partially injury related, but Azeez Ojolari is still a free agent again. We were talking about trading for him before. I don't know if we still want to, but they can sign him for not the price of Josh Sweat in free agency.
Well, I'm praying that medical red flags matter this year. I mean, this guy's hurt every year. His brother's been hurt the last 2 years. I mean, unfortunately, they're not holding up in the NFL, neither one of them. When they are healthy, they show flashes of being really good. So, and also BJ hit a wall last year. I mean, after midseason, he really was, not getting it done. I mean, if down the stretch, we didn't have a sack in the last 8 games. We did have one with Gardeck chasing Justin Fields out of bounds. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting offseason. Now, here's my question to both of you. I'm going to start with Marcos. So if we looked at the rosters right now and the coaching staffs, how would you rank if you're doing the Lindy's preseason rankings for Lindy's Pro Football Magazine? How do you rank the NFC West coming into 2025?
Coaching staff, just the NFC West in particular, like put together and whatnot. You mean?
Yeah, like who do you think will be favored right now?
Out of the NFC West to be the best coaching staff?
No, I just meant including the coaching, but as with the rosters they currently have, with the histories they currently have, and with the coaching staffs they currently have, if you had to make the call for Lindy's, who do you pick as the 2025 NFC West champion?
Oh, okay. All right. Unfortunately, it probably had to be I can't choose the Cardinals because of the coaching staff and and I'm including the general managers and the tendency. I don't think they're going to get the stuff that we need to get fixed the way we should. I think they might go offense again. They might pick a tackle in offense just to solidify that position and be like, okay, now we got our tackles, even though the interior of the offensive line is what we need to try to address better, or try to at least get more a solidified interior. And then on our defensive side, we need more than just one draft pick to address that group. And I don't know if Monty has that as his priority. I think Monty is just thinking to himself on defense, we're fine. Like these guys are better are playing better than what like the rankings are. And if that continues and they continue to like duct tape everything on the defensive side and then bolster up the offense for a third year in a row, which is what the tendency looks
Right.
like, then the Cardinals are not they're not making it out of the NFC West as champions. They'll go on a run again, but like on the consistent day by day games, those problems are gonna come up again. People need to stop fooling themselves about the last two games of the season. Kyler Murray was going up against a horrible coverage unit, and he did, between the numbers, execute. But then when they got to the red zone, that's where we lost it, of course. And the San Francisco 49ers, I mean, they were completely banged up. I mean, we were going up against a backup quarterback that was doing good. Josh Dobbs was having himself a good game,
Yeah.
and obviously, I'm not gonna put too much on him. He lost Jennings because of that fight. That was his number one target, and the defense of the 49ers was just replacements and whatnot. So yeah, from the tendencies where I want to be wrong, I just don't see the Cardinals being number one on that list. I think the Los Angeles Rams are probably going to repeat because of that defensive line. Now they're in a position where they can upgrade their offense. They're probably going to try to bolster their pass protection unit. They're probably going to go for another wide receiver to add to that group. And on defense, they're probably going to try to address the coverage,
Right.
which maybe they'll do it during the draft. But I think their problems are easier to fix than the Cardinals' problems because we have
Yes.
no studs on that D line. We have good players with great hustle, but no studs, and we're either gonna have to sign somebody like a Hassan Reddick who we missed out of his good years. His good years are behind him now, unfortunately. And I
Right.
love the guy. But we're gonna have to overspend or give up draft capital for a stud, and then the rest of the line we're just hoping that just like what we have is like, hey, you guys can maintain. And then what about the coverage? I mean, what about the linebacking core? What about those guys are part of the coverage unit as well? It's just there's too much to patch up. And I know people are high on their corners, but they're the reason why Nick Rallis calls so much zone is because he doesn't trust our corners. And I've seen them when it comes to man coverage. Unfortunately, Max Melton with his few snaps and whatnot was exposed in man coverage. Unfortunately, same thing goes with Sterling Thomas. Anytime you put him in man coverage, he lost, like, the one that sticks out to me. He lost a battle against Adam Thielen and celebrates because Adam Thielen by himself dropped the ball. And I'm like, no, you got beat. You got stacked by a 34-year-old wide receiver that you were up on the line of scrimmage on. Like that's been maintained. The fact that they keep playing him over Keitrell Clark and people are super excited about a guy who they put him off the line of scrimmage for a reason. They play him in cover three and cover in quarters for a reason because that way he has the leverage on not getting beat over the top and gives up everything underneath. But like put these guys in man coverage. None of these guys hold up. So we still need to get ourselves somebody to add to our cornerback room. They need to quit messing around with Garrett Williams and just push him to the outside. That's where we drafted him at. Don't just typecast him in one area. He's great at the slot, but he's great at the slot because he plays a great zone in that position. But put him outside because we need somebody.
Yeah. Yep. So, Kyle, what would your beat rankings be?
Well, again, there's a ways to go still at this point because one, the 49ers don't have a defensive coordinator at this point, so that definitely influences the decision making. But I guess first, I would say the Rams probably would be first. The 49ers would be second. The Cardinals 3 and the Seahawks 4. That would be my early prognostication going into the season. Again, I don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be for the Seahawks, or I assume Geno Smith is going to come back as the quarterback next year for the Seahawks, but they have like real questions to kind of ask themselves about what direction they think this thing is going. Because when Pete Carroll missed the playoffs, it wasn't good enough. This year, they were basically the same team and decided it wasn't good enough because they fired Ryan Grubb.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what to do with the Seahawks or what direction that's headed. So I feel better about the direction of the Cardinals than the Seahawks, in spite of the fact that the Cardinals lost 2 games this year to the Seahawks, which again would have put them out of it would have put them in contention for the wild card or the playoffs with the division if they had won both of those Seahawks games. But I still feel better about the direction the Cardinals are going than the direction of the Seahawks because of how good the Cardinals offense was this year. I know they're a few pieces on defense away from getting to that point, but I think even if they add a star pass rusher or a star nose tackle in the draft, or sign an Ernest Jones or sign a top pass rusher this offseason, they still won't have the star power of the 49ers. And I know the 49ers are probably going to look a little different next year. Charvarius Ward might not be back. Deebo Samuel might not be back for them. Javon Hargrave is going to get released. They've already said it. They want to bring back Hargrave, but he's going to get released just because of his contract being too much. So the 49ers still have star power, and all things being equal at the start of the season, I bank on that being able to replicate, but everyone's chasing the Rams. The way the Rams have replaced the young talent on the defense, I don't know if Kupp's going to be back next year, but I trust that they'll be able to replicate his production because he had a real down year. Obviously Stafford, if Stafford retires, we can change the conversation, but Stafford was kind of like, we're going to take a step back and evaluate and everything. I assume Stafford will be back next year, but I mean, the Rams were basically 9-1 the last 10 weeks of the season, won a playoff game in resounding fashion against the Vikings, and they have a young defense. I see no reason why the Rams won't be right back in the same spot they were at next year. So I think everyone's chasing the Rams. There's still some questions to be answered about all 3 of the other teams, but man, the Rams have got it down. And if they draft a couple offensive linemen or improve the cornerbacks and the safeties, I mean, you could be talking about them again competing for Super Bowls or competing for the NFC Championship. I mean, they were 3 minutes away from hosting the NFC Championship game this year, and that was an incredible turnaround from them from where they started the season. So I feel good about the Rams number 1, and then you can convince me 2 through 4 could be any combination of 49ers, Seahawks, and Cardinals, because there's just so many questions left to be answered for all 3 of those teams.
Well, I think it's pretty much a given the 49ers will bounce back, and probably in a big way. So if it were me, I think I'd put 49ers 1 to bounce back in a big way. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, I love Brock Purdy. I love the way he plays. Love the way he floats. Love the way he hangs in there. I think their young receivers are going to, with Ayuk back, and I love the kid Pearsall and George Kittle. I think 49ers will have the most talent and, a comparable head coach to Sean McVay. So I think it would be 49ers. Then I think clearly the Rams. And then I think the Seahawks. They won 10 games this year. People always want to sort of count them out. And we can't beat them. I mean, let's just face the frickin' reality that we haven't beaten them in ages. I mean, they beat us and they embarrass us mostly because in those games they're like 2 or 3 point point spreads, and we're supposed to have every chance to win the games. and they're ugly freaking games every time. And, I think it's become a stigma, in Arizona for the Seahawks. I mean, we just seem to, lay an egg every time we play them. So for me to say, oh, the Cardinals will be better than the Seahawks, given that knowledge, I can't do it. I can't. We got to be realistic. Now, am I hoping that being, picked last, which I think the Cardinals have warranted based on the history of the last 4 years? Do I think I like that? No. But I'm also feeling like, I've heard all along fans saying that Gannon's the next Dan Campbell, and we're going to be on this. The third year is going to be a crush it year. We're going to make the playoffs and everything. Boy, a lot will happen. First of all, I don't think anyone's on a Dan Campbell. He's his own unique self. But the other thing is, I don't see the cupboard being loaded for the Cardinals that way, nor the coaching staff that way for the Cardinals to have in year 3, break through and win 11 games or whatever and be on track with where the Lions have been. I just, it's such a stretch for me. I can't. So I'm trying to be realistic. Although I'd welcome it and, love it. Would love to see it. Last question for you both. You've been watching the playoffs, and this is after you both answer this question, I'm going to sign off. But you've seen the playoffs. And you've seen the level of play. What are the Cardinals missing most on both sides of the ball that precludes them from really being in the picture, a playoff picture? Kyle, will start with you.
I'll start number 1, success in the slot. On offense, motion offenses all over the place. Buffalo Bills running motion offenses. The teams that we come to expect, the Los Angeles Rams, 49ers, or sorry, not 49ers, Cardinals, the Commanders with Cliff Kingsbury running that offense, motion all over the place. You see motion is incredible at deducing who is going to be a covering man, who's going to be covering zone. Do you have quarterback spies, things of those sorts? Cardinals don't run a lot of that and don't have that go-to receiver that you can count on. I mentioned briefly earlier on defense, from Mikey Samerstill to CJ Gardner-Johnson to Teron Johnson to Trent McDuffie. Guy who can guard that slot corner is almost just as important as the slot corner themselves. Marlon Humphrey kind of plays that role for the Ravens as well. At times he alternates between boundary and slot, a little less slot post-injury, but he still alternates between those two for the Ravens. So those are the big things I'd point to with the success. And then, I mean, look at the Rams. The Rams with rookies, like Marcos pointed out, with rookies and sophomores, had the most prolific pass rush of any team in the playoffs this year. I give the Chiefs a lot of bonus points too. Their pass rush is excellent and young as well. But I mean, how many times are you watching Kansas City and you think it's Chris Jones making a play and it's actually Wharton or it's one of the other guys that are big, beefy defensive linemen that they can just alternate in and out of that defense. And Spags is so good at drawing up those design blitzes and showing blitz and dropping back. It's excellent play calling. And I'm not even saying the play calling itself is the great separator between, say, a Nick Rallis and a Steve Spagnuolo. I think some teams can overcome that.
I mean, come on, please.
No, there's quite the gap. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like the Rams with Chris Shula had that prolific pass rush, and who cares if you can rush the passer, if the Eagles can just say, well, we're just going to run it with Jalen Hurts and run it with Saquon Barkley, and now your pass rush doesn't matter because you can't stop the run. So, there are great equalizers in that sense, but yeah, defending the slot, playing in the slot from the receiver standpoint, and prolific interior and outside pass rushing. You got to have one of those two to make it deep in the playoffs. And you can go to Buffalo with what Ed Oliver is doing and what Gregory Rousseau had been doing throughout the season. Those are the keys to making deep runs in the playoffs, in addition to the foundation of strong quarterback, strong running game, which I would argue the Arizona Cardinals can get there with the roster that they currently have on offense. I don't see any reason why, if they incorporate receivers in the slot, motion, zone running schemes, things of those sorts, why this group that the Cardinals have can't do what Washington just did or can't do what the Eagles just did. I see no reason to say why they can't have a run like that if they incorporate some of those things into their offense and defense. So those are the things that I would say they're lacking that quote unquote elite teams have at this point.
Right. Thank you. Well done. Marcos.
I think they just need, like, you'll see consistent quarterback play be number one, and you'll see like a good pass rush at being like either number two or just being number or in like exchangeable between both of them. Where
Yeah.
these teams that make it far into the playoffs, and a lot of them do incorporate a lot of like run heavy schemes, or they just like put the run before the pass and whatnot because the pass is supposed to play off of the run. That's where the
Right.
efficiency comes in.
Right.
Um, I'm not sure if the Cardinals, like, unfortunately, with so Kyler Murray was better at throwing between the numbers this year than he has been before, and it's weird because his throws outside of the numbers haven't been as good as they usually are, and that was his specialty, was the outside the numbers and the inside of the numbers. But with that being said, he's not consistent. That's the issue, and I don't know if that's ever going to be fixed because of his size, because he needs to see a gap open. He needs to have the right protection in, and the defensive tackles, aside from queuing up, they queue up when he throws the ball. Every time he pats the ball, they put the hands up and stuff. So they already got that time. So that route has to hit, has to win, and has to be there at the right time for Kyler Murray to be able to release the ball. And if one of those things is off, then the completion doesn't happen, or even worse, it may be intercepted. So he can throw them when he could see him, and when everything is playing well, he can hit that. And like, I think he needs to just get back to at least the roots of being under Cliff Kingsbury, where he was throwing really well outside the numbers. And if they can combine the two, then maybe we would have a consistent play. That's why Greg Dortch didn't really have himself very many catches this year, even if he got a lot of separation, even if he got a lot of cushion by corners, he wasn't being seen over the middle, and the only target that Kyler Murray trusted over the middle was Trey McBride. And I did see they tried to put Marv in the slot a couple of times. He had some success with some crossers, but they they were really channeling their, like, okay, Kyler, we have Marv, who's a big target on the outside. Trust that you can hit him to the outside and do it often. And he just didn't really trust it for one reason or another. So I don't know if there's ever going to be consistency with that because of the quarterback play, and unfortunately, that means the quarterback play is going to be inconsistent. And then with the pass rush, we need so many upgrades or changes at the position that for now, I don't know if they're even going to address it or if they even want to address it going forth. I just think they think to themselves, we're fine on defense. They overachieved. Doesn't mean that they're great. They're just overachieved. And on offense, we need to make sure everything's fixed and done so well that, like, we can sell tickets because we put up 33 points a game. And with doing that, they're just ignoring the basic fact of the matter that if you want Kyler Murray to be efficient, you need to have a run first scheme. If you want Kyler Murray to throw up numbers and whatnot, you need to go back to the spread, throw to the outside numbers that people didn't like. But that also involved throwing a bunch of screens and whatnot, because that actually helped Kyler Murray and getting those easy, completions and having his playmakers get yardage and move the chains and whatnot. So that's it. I wanted to give a big shout out to Cliff Kingsbury though. There's a lot of people that are talking about Cliff having so much success and winning the battle of the X's. I hate that terminology. I think it's like high school childish stuff to be able to say, "Oh, look, our ex is doing really well." It's like, if you guys are happy for the guy, be happy, but don't conceal the fact that a lot of this fan base wanted him out. They made fun of him. They harassed him to the
Correct.
point where like there's people that were putting up videos of cussing him out on his last game and people amplifying that. And of course, there's an individual who's selling shirts with a clown nose on Cliff Kingsbury. Boy, did that not age well. I'm sure that person's not putting up any tweets or anything like that. So, congratulations to Cliff. I'm happy for him. He had to endure a lot. Me and you, Walter, were always respectful of him. Brett Coleman respects the heck out of him, and he always had been. And I really hope he just like continues with the success, and I hope the best for him.
Yeah, me too. And the combination of he's had high volume offense with hugely productive quarterbacks in like what does he have like 17 seasons now, and only 2 seasons I can think of his offenses weren't not excluding Kyler's rookie year. We'll give him a pass on that. But only 2 seasons I can think of he had down years production wise, or he didn't have his offense right up there with the top offenses, whether it was in college or in the NFL. I mean, he had 2 top 10 offenses in 4 years with the Cardinals. He had 2 top 8 offenses in 2 years with the Cardinals. So the combination of that and his work ethic, which is non-pari, which means, like a class all his own. I mean, for Bidwell to have to admit, I have to at least give him credit for being the hardest working coach I've ever seen. So, I mean, the combination of the work ethic and the dedication to his craft and the ability to scheme these things and develop quarterbacks is, I think, was a ticket to success that was predictable. He got over his head in Arizona, being named a head coach, which was titular in reality. It was only a title because he wasn't given any of the powers that a head coach has or the wherewithals and all that. So I'm glad you mentioned him. I'm delighted for him. It's a sensitive subject on the Cardinals board. They don't want me talking about him, or a lot of the fans there, but I'm not going to ignore this. It's too special. I'm not going to write another article. I wrote one this week. Kudos to Cliff. That was, met with a lot of pushback from some of our fans, and which was disappointing. I mean, you can't, recognize the guy. I know there's like, you're obsessed with Cliff. No, I was obsessed because you have to be obsessed to push back against an obsessed mob who's hanging this guy in effigy and ridiculing him and trolling Commanders fans. We told you so. The minute they started a little losing streak in the middle of the season, that's all I could see on Twitter was, "Hey, we tried to tell you, wah wah," only it didn't happen, did it? And it just happened to coincide with Jaden Daniels playing through a painful rib injury that every time he threw, he winced. He played through it like a man. And once he got through that, what is it now? 7 games in a row they've won. 5 to finish the season and 2 in the playoffs. It's just awesome. But kudos to him. With the Cardinals, I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm watching these playoff games. I just feel like we're so far away. I mean, the only thing that seems close to me is the offensive line and the running back room. Everything else to me is a mystery. And let's just face it, we're watching on every team has 2 or 3 star players on defense in the front 7. We have 0. And I've felt all along, I've been very uncomfortable with this neglect for the defense because I see it as a stalling tactic, like an excuse. Oh, well, we were making Kyler comfortable, so we can back burner that, and eventually it'll work out. No, no, no. I mean, if this thing bottoms out next year, I think they should all go. They all hitch their wagons to Kyler from day one. If Kyler doesn't cut it this year, I think they all deserve to go. I mean, people say, well, there were no other options. There's always other options. Look at the 49ers. They lucked out with a 7th rounder after giving up all those draft picks for, Trey Lance and all that. There's always another answer. And I'll tell you this, I'm anxious to find out, to look at a Drew Petzing offense with a big, strong pocket passer, especially who can dial up dimes over the middle off play action. And before people laugh at me, which they will, because they don't, in my opinion, they don't go to the tape and do the work. I like Clayton Tune. I liked him out of Houston. Mel Kiper liked him out of Houston. I mean, he's gotten the baddest rap in Arizona. And on top, he's the new Cliff. Like, just say, hey, he's just so god awful. Well, they set him up to fail big time. And I think given the opportunity, here's the thing. Is Clayton Tune, if you go back and study his games at Houston, he deals between the hash marks. He deals. I mean, Tank Dell became a big draft pick because he was hitting Dell in stride left and right. This guy is really, and he's sneaky mobile. He gets out of jams and he can run. I mean, and he's got the good arm. I'm just glad he's on the team, and I hope if given the opportunity, he ever gets a fair chance, he would get it. But there's also other guys who in this offense could be good fits. So I think just putting all the eggs in Kyler's basket, if that's what you're going to do, then if it doesn't work, bye. I mean, sorry, but that's how you would, approach this, and that's what you're going to get, and it's going to be difficult, but I don't know if we can end up with 1 or 2 star players on the defensive front, but let me end with this thought. What happened to the Cardinals the day J.J. Watt surprised everyone and posted on Twitter that photo of him announcing in a Cardinal shirt he was heading to Arizona? That moment transformed the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, there's something about star power that really works. It also says something, and I know people hate Steve Keim and this and that, but he was, and he had all his warts and this and that. But he brought star power to Arizona. He brought Carson Palmer. He brought Rodney Hudson. He brought DeAndre Hopkins. He brought Hollywood Brown. And he brought J.J. Watt, of all people, somehow decided he'd come to Arizona. And J.J. was legitimate in saying, look, this is a young team I think could really do it. I mean, look at the immediate impact he had on the football team. And people just to this day complain the Cardinals overpaid him. I mean, look at the difference he made in that building from day one. I mean, if they don't sign J.J. Watt, do you think the Cardinals go 7-0 in 2021? Look at the way he bonded with the defensive players. Look at the way he grabbed Zaven Collins and played in that first game tackling Derrick Henry. And behind the line of scrimmage, both of them. Tackles for losses. He and Zaven were doing twist stunts and getting in the backfield. It was awesome. I mean, it was an instant change, and because it signaled to every player in that building, wow, the Cardinals are getting serious. They're bringing in J.J. Watt. Are you kidding? So, it makes a big difference. And I think if the Cardinals I would sacrifice all of free agency to sign minimum guys. If you could sign 2 star players for the front 7 on the defense, and then turn it over to the draft try to get 3-star players in the first 3 rounds, I'd be fine with that. But a bunch of mid-range free agents, none of whom really moves the needle too far in one direction, in like the hype direction. I'm not sure, that pattern that Monty's been using is gonna do it. Do you, Marcos? I mean, what do you think?
After 2 years, like no, it's not. And I get that like the drafting. Let's be real about the drafting. It's a shotgun approach. So when people are mentioning about like, hey, like his drafting's really good and better, they're only saying that because of the fact that he drafted a tackle that like people would want paired up with the
Yes.
quarterback who wanted him, and then everybody else. It's a shotgun approach. It's like I got a ton of picks that I'm gonna pick here and there, and then the same people are complaining about what we did in the third round last year and what direction he went, and so everybody can nitpick what he does on every single round of a player that they didn't like, but he is hitting it with that approach because he's trying to like see what's gonna stick, and he in 1 year solidified on 2 positions. One wasn't, like I mentioned before, I didn't like the pick, but Paris Johnson, we can't argue with how good he is. So
Yep.
on that one, you can't say that's a miss. It was a hit. And Garrett Williams is another one. Typecast, that's something that I didn't think it was typecast at, unfortunately. But he is also another hit. And you can say to a certain degree, maybe Michael Wilson will fall under that, but he is hitting the positions with a lot of picks, and this year he doesn't have that luxury. This year, after doing his and whatnot, he's given up assets for almost nothing. That's my main issue. He's given up assets for seventh and third and sixth round picks, which is like you're picking at the back of the draft hopeful players, and you're giving up what you see as actual talent that people may not see as that. And people need to understand too, by the way, because people like to tee off, unfortunately, on and it's so sickening how people tee off on Isaiah Simmons to the point that they're only like their research is just like searching up like, oh, missed tackle by Isaiah Simmons. But there politics is real in football. You're not gonna be obligated to play somebody if you give a seventh round pick over him when he was literally traded for the last day of the last preseason game. When their defense has gone through camp and everything and whatnot, you have all your players solidified and you get somebody for a seventh round pick, you're not obligated to play him. You're not. And that's how it's just gonna be, unfortunate. So but you gave him up for a seventh round pick, and we're like, okay, so you gave him a first seventh round pick. What's gonna happen with that? Like, if you didn't see this guy in your future, you could have traded him before that if that was even the situation. You could have gotten something even more for him. Like
Way
DeAndre
more.
Hopkins being released because they were trying to dangle him and it failed, and they were just like, we're just gonna have to release him. Like he's a failure when it comes to like these situations, and the only thing people can give him a nod for is his drafting, which is a shotgun approach. Let's see what he does this draft. Let's see what he does this offseason. He's gonna have a good amount of cap space. It's not 99 million. It's gonna be half of that. We know that going in. We'll see
Yep.
what he does when it comes to addressing it. If it's the same approach this year as last year, if they go into it and they're like, okay, we need to solidify our tackles and we need to get another wide receiver in this room, which drives me so incredibly nuts that people are even like trying to go that direction and they don't want to touch the defense again, then yeah, next year, like I like if we get another similar season as last year, or
Right.
Kyler Murray gets injured halfway through, like he needs to go. He needs to go. We need to get somebody else in here that's gonna be in control and not just taking orders or being guided which direction he's in. And unfortunately, because Michael Bidwell is who Michael Bidwell is, I don't see that changing.
Yeah. And you have to question, like, JG was saying, like, we hired the perfect offensive coach for Kyler Murray and Drew Petzing to take the pressure off him. Well, guess what? We just watched a bunch of playoff games. Kyle, guess what? Are these quarterbacks constantly under duress in the playoffs? I mean, do any of them look like they just have the comfort of just being able to hand the ball off every play or just do an occasional play action? Or when it comes right down to winning football games, what do quarterbacks have to do?
Well, Jalen Hurts has the nice safety blanket of Saquon Barkley, but that doesn't mean he still didn't have to make plays all throughout that game, either with his legs or with his feet. But yes, to your point, all these teams have to have playmakers at the end of games in order to win these late playoff games. And you saw what Lamar Jackson did yesterday, where even through the mistakes and even through the fumbles and even through the interceptions, stayed in the pocket, made plays, and executed.
Yes, he did. I was so proud of him. I love that guy. I mean, I watched him in his last college game at Louisville. He didn't have to play and probably was going against the advice of his mother, the agent, because you're risking injury if you're going to be a first-round pick. He was against Louisville versus Mississippi State. He ran the ball himself in that game like 30 times and nearly willed Louisville to victory. I mean, Mississippi State had a really good team that year, and they had a really good defense. He wore himself to the bone in that game for the Louisville Cardinals. And I was so impressed with that. I mean, this guy puts it out there. But I think it takes a certain ferocity in a quarterback to be able to fight through the adversity of these high-pressure games. You really have to have it. You have to have I was so impressed with Baker Mayfield. Even though they lost that game, he took off out of the pocket one time and just lowered his shoulder and ran around, spun around to get a first down and got up like total psych. I mean, that guy's plays with such intensity. I think it requires that kind of intent. Look at Josh Allen. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. These guys have things in common. The way that they approach the ferocious way in which they approach the game. And therefore, I think everybody's looking for quarterbacks who have that in their DNA. You can't hide a quarterback in the playoffs. You just can't. Or you can't just try to make him comfortable because all of it's going to be uncomfortable. You have to have guys who somehow perversely like uncomfortable, because then it challenges them and they, respond to it. So, that's been a common denominator for me watching these playoffs is how tough these quarterbacks are. I mean, Jared Goff had a bad game, but man, oh man, that kid is tough. And, he kept fighting back and, he took a licking and, he kept on ticking. He had a bad day, but I can't fault, the way he stood in there and tried to keep his head up, and respond. And he did on a couple occasions, threw an interception, come right back and lead the team. So, but these guys they're grown men, on a mission, and the intensity is so bright. It's just incredibly impressive. And then you got Jaden Daniels, who's just easy like Sunday morning. I mean, I've rarely seen a quarterback make quarterbacking look so much fun and so easy and smooth. And under pressure, he's got he's just so slippery. But nothing of it speaks to panic. I mean, it's all slowed down for him already at his young age. It's just unbelievable to watch. All right. That said, we're finishing with your tonight's pick. Just say who you got and in a quick second why, sentence why. Who you got, Kyle?
I'm going with Ohio State because they have $20 million roster that is from top to bottom just incredible. I know Notre Dame has the excellent corners. I can't wait to watch Igbuka matching up against Notre Dame's defense, but I would expect a big passing game out of Ohio State if they're going to win. I know Will Howard has kind of ebbed and flowed this year, but yeah, I would go Ohio State by, call it, touchdown.
Okay. Marcos, who you got?
I'm gonna go with Ohio State as well. I've always been kind of like a Buckeyes type of person, so I like cheering for them. So just pure because of college football and how many times I've cheered for Ohio State. I'm gonna go that direction.
Yeah. I like both teams a lot. It's such a great game to scout for the draft because there's so many really good prospects, especially at Ohio State. There's one almost in every position group to look at, including Howard at quarterback. So somehow I feel like the Irish have the leprechaun on their side this time. I don't know why. And I know my dad in heaven was a huge Notre Dame fan. Maybe he's whispering in my ear, but for some reason, I have this instinct that Notre Dame's going to pull this one out. I love Notre Dame's corners. I love the way they play defense. I wish the Cardinals would play like that. I mean, watch them in this game play sticky man. I love Jack Kaiser in the middle, their linebacker. I am mocking him every time I mock to the Cardinals in round 4. So, yeah, I'm hoping for a great game. Should be a lot of fun. What a great way to end this wonderful football weekend. And happy Martin Luther King Day to all of you. What an enlightening day that is because of him. And yeah, thanks for being with us. It was fun to, talk with Marcos as we always do, and to assess where the Cardinals are in the NFC West. There's a lot of work to be done. I know they're going to get, fast after it, beginning, and this is getting close now. We're going to have the championship games next week, and 2 weeks after that, it's the Super Bowl. So, and not too long after that, we'll have the NFL season starting up. So it's pretty exciting. We'd love to have Marcos back to talk about prospects in the draft. And if you check him out on the reboot, Red Bird Reboot, he and Blake Murphy do a great job. And and this guy here watches his film and does his due diligence, and that's why you can trust what he has to say. So, and for Kyle Ledbetter, my partner in crime and the wizard behind the curtain here, thank you as always, and have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the game tonight or end of this week, and then keep going with your Sacramento Kings. And I'm just so glad my Oakland A's are coming to your backyard because you're doing a hell of a job there. So anyway, my best to all of you, and in the interim, may the red rain of playoff confetti shower down on you one day into a red sea at State Farm Stadium. Red rain.